Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Inventory Management Training Podcast. My name is Al Hughes, and today I'll be your host. And in today's session, we're going to talk about various aspects involved in managing your inventory. And we're going to start off in P21 in the item maintenance module, and we'll show you where the various order points are located on stocking items. And we'll also go into the purchase stock card, which shows the entire calculation that brings you up to your net stock. And right after that, we're going to go into the order entry screen and show you the quick little right mouse click action that can exclude a sale or align items from usage. So in other words, if you have a customer that uses 4 widgets a month, but in December they shut down production and tear up their machines and replace a lot of various parts, so in December they use 400 a month, this would show you how that one sale that you do in December can be excluded from the usage so that it doesn't inaccurately increase your restocking profiles. So after that, we're going to move into the actual operational excellence guide. And it's just important that there's 2 chapters in there that are pretty important that you read. And so we're going to start by touching on chapter 8, which is the process for getting approval for new stocking items. And it's just about a 10-minute read that you need to do on your own, but we're going to scroll through it and show you how to get to it and hit the high points. And then we're going to move right into chapter 10 of that same guide, and it covers order controls for things that you've already been selling somewhat. They're not necessarily new stocking items anyway. They can be, but we'll get into both of those chapters and we'll show you where they're at. And the real meat and potatoes of this call is the stock status report. And of course, we've had the original stock status report has been out there for a long time. And if you're a manager, you're probably already familiar with it. So we're just going to touch on that for a second, but we're going to move right into the new stock status analysis. And this is an update of the original report. And the nice thing about it is that it's interactive. So it actually makes suggestions to you based on usage and order points, and it kind of plays the role of a worksheet for you so that you can go through and pick the low-hanging fruit of items that you think you might want to stock more of or stock less of, or maybe change them to a non-stock item or vice versa. So that's pretty much the general information we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to start by going right over into P21 in item maintenance. So right now in the item maintenance screen, I already have an item pulled up here that's a stocking item, and if you look, let me just point out here that it shows the item in the header, but down at the line level it shows all the different branches that have this as a sellable item. So the second column is checkbox. The box is checked if it's sellable. Excuse me. But in the first column, the box is checked if it's stockable. So we can see here that Austin stocks this part. And what we're going to do is I highlighted that line, and right above the location numbers, you can see there's a tab that says replenishment. I'm just going to click on that tab because that's where it shows the details of the order points. So notice on the left it says the replenishment method is min-max. The min is 20, the max is 36. It's a Class A item. The current forecast is 36. That's per month. So at any rate, all this is good information that you might be interested in at some point. And I just want to point out that over where it says min-max, if you were using a different stocking method, such as order point, order quantity, or up to, or any of the others, that would automatically be displayed there. And you do not have access to change this information. You would have to go through your IM&P contact to change anything in here. But we just want to show you where that's located at. And now I'm just going to hit the F2 key because there is a screen called the Item Master Inquiry. And we can access that by hitting the F2 key. And notice that when it pops up, it's got all kinds of tabs across the top. Hopefully you already use this quite often because it's a really good research screen. But today we're just looking at one tab. So if you've never used this screen before, be sure you get familiar with it because like I said, it's useful in many different ways. But right now I'm pointing at the top center tab that says Purchase Stock Card. And I'm going to click on that. And of course, when I hit F2, it brought up the same part that I already had pulled up in the item maintenance screen, and it pulled it up for my branch because I had that line highlighted. And now the good thing about this screen is that it gives us all the information that involves getting you up to your net stock. So as you look across here, you can see everything from on hand to allocated to on POs. So it's got all kinds of various categories, and then it shows the quantities in those categories. In the next section, it shows the order points and order quantities, and in this case, it's a min-max, but you can see them loaded there. So sometimes there might be situations where for some reason you're out of stock, and I'm just suggesting that if you're in any screen and you've got that item pulled up, sometimes it's a really quick, easy way to hit F2 and click on this tab, and you can easily identify then why you might not have the quantity you want on hand. So it can be very helpful. The next thing we're going to move right into is the order entry screen. And of course, this is what we talked about when I mentioned it in the introduction, that maybe you have a customer that's using 4 widgets a month. And this is it. And so you have 4 widgets on hand. But here we are in December. They're shutting down for some kind of rebuild they're doing, and they're going to order 400 of these, and they need them in a week. So you're ordering 400 of these in. It might take a few days to get them in or something. But the whole point is you don't want in January to all of a sudden have a min-max of 50 and 100 or something, because if you don't do what I'm going to show you, this could influence your sales. So all I'm pointing out here is that when your cursor gets over to the allocated area, you do a right mouse click, and you can see that when you do the right mouse click, this box is checked, or this field is checked. And all I have to do is left mouse click it, and it will be unchecked. So it defaults to being checked. And if I left mouse click it, it becomes unchecked. So I'm gonna right mouse click it one more time, and you can see that now it's unchecked. So each time I left mouse click it, it's just a toggle switch. There it's back checked again. So anytime you enter a new line, it defaults to being checked on any new line. And all you have to do is right mouse click it to uncheck it. So again, any item you key on an order, by default, it's going to influence your reorder points based on the algorithm that's used to influence your order points. So just keep in mind it's that right mouse click that allows you to turn that option off. So we're going to look now at the OpsX guide. I'm going into the Operational Excellence portal here, and I just want to point out that over here I'm moving my mouse around on the right side, and you can see the area that says Operational Excellence Guide. If I was to click on that, the Operational Excellence Guide would open up, and it's got about 16 or 18 chapters maybe that talk about all kinds of good operational information. And what we're going to talk about today is just 2 of those chapters. So it's going to be chapter 8 and chapter 10. And on chapter 8, this is the area where we discuss new items that you want to stock. So you might have a new customer who came on board. There might be a new production line your customer is using where they're going to need new stocking items. So this chapter first displays the people who approve new stocking items in the IM&P group. And if I scroll down a little bit more, it's going to give some definitions and some background on that and a flow chart here. So some of this is the approval process, who approves it, who has to send in these forms and so forth. And down here, the next page is the business case for stocking them. So again, these aren't things that you've been selling for years, and so there's no history behind them yet. So your customer came to you and said, hey, you know, we have whatever going on where we need these new parts. So you fill out this business case with all this information, and you send it in to get it approved. And in some cases, the customer might give you a commitment letter where they actually agree to buy certain quantities of certain item IDs, and it's filled out here on this list, and they sign for it. And oftentimes, if they haven't used them up in a certain period of time, and I think down here it says 12 months or something, they're just agreeing that if we put these items in stock, they will purchase them. Now, all of these don't have to take place every time you have new stocking items, but these are just various things that could come into play when you're trying to put new items in your stock. Here's a new item setup form where if you do need some new items set up, because remember that initially they won't be showing as stock in your branch. They might just show as sellable items. So you would fill out the form and send it into IM&P, and once it got approved, they would go in and make it stockable and set up a min and max based on the forms you filled out. So that's, again, when you're dealing with new stock items, that's what we were talking about there. Now I'm looking at the chapter 10 of that same OpsX guide, and this is order controls of items that you've been selling all along. So it's a little bit different topic. We're not discussing new inventory here. We're discussing the ongoing management of stuff that's been getting sold every month. So first, again, it lists the analysts that you work with based on what region you're in. And I'm just going to scroll down a little ways, and it goes through some definitions here. And in the next page, it starts talking about the methods we use for our order points. And in this first one, it talks about min and maxes and gives a lot of good information behind what is involved in a min and max. Then it goes to order point, order quantity, and it talks about various aspects of that. And finally, the third one is up to, and it talks about and explains all the details behind that. And this won't take hardly 10 minutes to read, and it'll be pretty helpful. So on your own time, you need to scroll through and read both chapter 8 and chapter 10. And again, on this OpsX page, and by the way, to get to it, we would type in InView up in the top left address field. And from InView, we would just click on this option for the Operational Excellence portal. And again, it's this purple tab right on the far right column, and notice there's a training manual above it and a playbook. So there's a ton of good information out here in this area that deals with everything from just SOPs to reference information. So don't be afraid to look through that stuff as often as you can. Okay, so we're going to move in now to the actual reports that we want to talk about. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to bring up the stock status report. And this one, if you're a manager, you should be pretty familiar with this report already. This is the original stock status report that we have used for years and years. And on the first of every month, it automatically appears in your Operational Excellence Report portal. So what it does, and I'm just going to briefly explain it, because when we move into the new report, it's going to be very similar to this with some additional columns to the right. So first, let's just go through what we already had, and then I'll pull up the new report and we'll talk about the changes it has. So on the original stock status report, I'm just briefly going to point out that it's got the actual location, the location ID and name, then the item ID and description, and the supplier ID and the supplier name. Now from column I all the way over to column Z, these are all usage columns. Let me just highlight both of those for a second. So column I through Z. These all show usage, and you can notice that some are blue and some are white. The blue ones are your location usage, only at your location. That's why it says LOC up here. And there's 3 different blue columns because the first one deals with 3 months usage, the second one with 6 months usage, and the third one deals with 12 months usage. So within those, it tells how many you sold each month, how many customers bought it each month, or excuse me, how many orders there were on it each month, and then how many customers purchased. So it breaks it down into those 3 categories for each group of sales. The white categories tend to be company-wide usage. That's why it says DXP here. So again, we start out with 3-month usage locally, then we go to 3-month usage company-wide, then we go 6 months usage locally, then 6 months company-wide, and then 12 months locally and 12 months company-wide. So it's all good usage information that if you're going to be stocking things at your branch or recommending changes to your stocking, then that's the first piece of information that you would want to know about. And as I scroll to the right, just notice that after we get past column W, past column Z, after that, everything to the right of column Z is your order management profiles. So we show on hand, allocated, on back order, on PO, on transfer, then whether it's stockable or not, the bin location, the replenishment method, then we've got the order points, min and max, or if it's up to or whatever, it still is for whatever it applies. Then we've got unit of measure, the location that it's replenished from, the product group, your standard cost, the MAC cost, and the current monthly forecast. So again, you've been seeing this report for quite some time, and I'm sure you're pretty familiar with it, but I just wanted to review it again because now I'm going to move into the new updated version of this report. And so I'm going to go down here and just pull it up here, and it's called the Stock Status Analysis. So I'm pulling it up here. It's going to look a little different because it's got different colors on it and a little bit different format. But let me point out that from column E through column V, so all of this is that same usage information that we just saw on the original stock status screen. And it's on the original stock status screen, you saw how it had blue for your location ones and white for DXP, and then blue for the next location and white again. That format's a little different on this one. I'm not sure why, but it is. But it's still the same information in the same order. You can see it starting out with 3 months local, 3 months company-wide, 6 months and so forth. 3 months company-wide, and then 3 months local. Then 6 months company-wide, then 6 months local, and so forth. So again, all of this is the same information. So I'm just going to scroll to the right now. And I'll show you how we get to this report towards the end of the call. But now to the right of all that usage information, we still have a lot of the same information that was on that original stock status report. We got quantity on hand, allocated, backordered on PO, transfer, so forth. So all of this is still the same. Everything we're seeing, there might be 1 or 2 columns that are slightly different. I'm going to keep scrolling over because here's the new information that we want to talk about. All of these columns that are colored in peach are new columns where the system makes suggestions to alter our mins and maxes, or to make it a non-stock item, or maybe it's non-stock and it's recommending to make it stockable. So these columns are the new part of this report, so to speak. And I just want to point out that at the bottom we have a bunch of tabs that break those categories into segments so we can segregate them and only look at that information. So once we run this report, it's going to have new stock items that need to be turned off, or just maintenance changes. And then, of course, it's got supplier notes and your stocking location where you would pull your distribution center that would supply you. So let me start by going up here in the top left corner now, because this is an interactive report. The original stock status report was just information you looked at, and that was it. This report is interactive, so you can go in here and put in information. The first thing you would do is you would put in your actual location ID here, and then you would click Populate Report. And after you click Populate Report, you would click Go. And once you do that, it would change, and you'd get an hourglass, and it would start populating the information for the number, the location number you typed here. Well, keep in mind that it might take anywhere from 1.5 to 6 minutes to populate this report. Depending on the size of your branch, you might have thousands of stocking items, and you might have thousands of customers, and so depending on the amount of sales you do and the amount of line items you push through in a month, this could take quite a while to generate, up to 6 minutes anyway. So I'm not going to do it on this call. I already did it before the call, but I am going to show you the effects of it. So let me go down here to the bottom and pull up the actual SOP for this. So, and this step-by-step, click-by-click shows the things we're going to do on that report to get the suggestions from it. But before we do, let me just point out some stocking criteria. So DXP has a general stocking rule that we require a minimum of 4 sales orders billed over 12 months to multiple customers and 2 over 6 months in order to make an item stockable. Now, again, that's if you're going by usage. If you don't have that and your customer still wants to sign a commitment letter, or you still want to do a business analysis or fill out one of those forms and get approval, those steps can be done if you don't meet these requirements. But right now, we're working this stock status analysis, and we're focusing just on usage. So you need to just be aware of that rule, that you have to have a minimum of 4 sales billed over 12 months to multiple customers, or 2 over 6 months. And that's in the SOP. I'm just going to scroll up to the top. Excuse me. So you can see here that in the first page of the SOP, it just gives real general information about the purpose of the SOP, the purpose of the report. And in the second page, it starts moving into the actual detailed step-by-step, click-by-click things that you do to generate this report. So you can see in the very first option, it shows you put in the location ID number, you click on Populate Report, and you click Go. As soon as you do that, you get this box. And if you're at a branch, you let it default to sales location and you just click Begin. But if you're at a DC, you would change it to the other option. After you click Begin, you're going to start getting that hourglass that could be 3 to 6 minutes. And it's going to populate your report. Now, when I say populate your report, what I mean is that this information down here is going to populate based on what you currently have as stockable and what your min and maxes are. So next you're going to go in and click Analyze Report and click Go. And when you do that, it's going to start populating the areas over in the peach colored headers. So the first item populates your report with your current min and maxes and your stockable items. The second time you click it and do Go, it populates all this recommendations. So, of course, I've already done that. And I'm going to bounce back to the SOP here and there and show you some things. But right now, I've already done that because it could take minutes, and we don't want to go through that on the call. But I'm going to click on the first tab here. And the first tab shows all new stocking items. These are the new stocking suggestions. So on the left, it's got the item ID. It's got the category field of stockable, what replenishment method. So you can see a lot of them are up to. But if I scroll down, there might be some that switch to other categories. Then it shows the actual order points. any kind of notes and the value. And I'm going to go to the second one here, which is items to turn off. And it's got a few items here that it shows the original stocking order points and the new ones that it's recommending. And to keep in mind, these are all just recommendations. This report does not automatically make any changes to your inventory. This is your worksheet, and you're going to use it to find the items you agree with, and then you're going to send it to your IM&P stock and analyst, and they're going to, if they approve, they're going to make the changes. So I'm going to the next tab, and it's maintenance changes, and this is where you're not changing it from stock to non-stock or vice versa. It might be recommending that instead of up to, go to min and max, or instead of min and max, go to up to, or instead of the current min and max, change it to a different min and max. So there's the three main categories: new stock items, items to turn off, and maintenance changes. And then the last two tabs are just peripheral information. And this one says supplier notes. It's just giving different notes about each supplier that supplies these items, because that might help you make a decision of whether it's stockable or not. And the last one is the distribution centers that you pull stock from, which could also play a role in it. So again, we have these multiple tabs at the bottom that just show specific information about that. And if I go back to the blue tab that says stock status, that's the original report out there. So let me emphasize again that this report is doing nothing more than reviewing the history of sales and other order information and recommending, totally based on numbers, recommending item changes or restock profile changes. But you, as a manager of that local branch, you know your customers' ordering habits, and you know maybe that a lot of these items you're shipping directly from the supplier to the customer, and you don't need to be stocking them. So you know the personal characteristics of your customer. And what you do is you take this algorithm information that is totally based on numbers, and you add in your local knowledge of the customer's buying habits, and based on that you try to find the low-hanging fruit, the things that you agree need to be stocked. So maybe this report will recommend 500 lines of changes. But what you're going to do is look through and sort through this report and make it a worksheet of your own. And you're going to narrow it down to the items that you totally agree need to be added to stock or taken away from stock or changed. And then you're going to submit it to your IM&P analyst. So one thing I do want to show you to start with is that as soon as you do the populate and analyze and go, and it recommends all this information, you should save it to your local folder, because it's right now. Well, let me do this. Let me go out and show you where this is at, and then I'll save it to my local folder so you can see that. So what I'm going to do is go back out to the actual Operational Excellence homepage, which I'm at now, and I'm going to show you where this report exists at. So in the middle column, it exists in two places, and I'm pointing right now at inventory and management, because you can go either direction. And some of you might have to go through inventory because you might not have access to the other option, but I think most of you are going to have access under management. But either way, when you click this first option, all the next steps are going to be the same. So after I click management, I come up and I click best practices. And as soon as I do that, most of the different chapters of the Operational Excellence Guide appear here, but also here's that stock status analysis report. This is the one that I've been showing you that makes the recommendations. Right below it is the SOP that I've been bouncing back to once in a while to see how that shows click by click, step by step how it works. So that's where they're located. I'm going to back up just for a second again, back up to the main page. Here's the actual operational excellence guide that gives you all kinds of information. And over here is where those reports exist. So in management or inventory, the first time I clicked on management, this time I'm going to click on inventory, and it's the same step from here on out. Best practices, and there's those chapters from the OpsX guide. So that entire operational excellence guide exists over to the right. That's the entire book. But here's some highlighted chapters are there so that you can, these are important chapters that you should read. Now let's go back to that stock status analysis report. I've already got it opened up here. And I've already run it, so it's already made all these different recommendations. And what you should do right after that is you should go in and do a save as here and save it to your local documents, because from there on out, this is going to become your worksheet now. So you populate the report, you analyze the report, you click go, and you wait a few minutes during each one. You save it to your desktop, and I'm going to go back to my SOP for a minute where it shows all those steps. And let me just point out that when it finishes doing that 3 to 6 minute period of calculations, it's going to give you this little analysis summary. So notice in the summary, it tells you how many items were analyzed, what percentage had changes, and how many new, and how many were turnoffs, and how many were changes. So a lot of times, once I click close, that goes away. So quite often, I make a copy of that and I paste it into my first tab. So that's why when I look back at the actual stock status analysis and I click under this tab at the bottom that says new stock items, it's sitting right here. I just pasted it in there because it appeared right when the report was done calculating. And I just copied it in here because otherwise when I click close, it goes away. And it doesn't matter because I've got all that information here, but just in case you want to have this summary information for later reference, I just save it into there. So going back to the SOP again for a second, notice that it shows the tabs across the bottom. It tells what's in those tabs going across the bottom, and it emphasizes here your requirements for a stocking item, the 4 sales per year to in the last 6 months. And then it tells also in number 7, it says save it to your local folder. It starts talking about sorting. So most of you have probably worked with Excel quite a bit already, and you're probably pretty good at doing sorts on spreadsheets, but I'm going to do some with you over the next few minutes before we end this session. But just notice that it's got keep in mind, in Excel, there's like 3 or 4 different ways you can sort stuff with using different categories and different fields. I'm just going to do the most common one that I use, and it's this one. And just so you know, the SOP gets into some pretty good detail where it shows how to do all the various sorting. So I'm going to go back and do that right now. I just wanted you to be aware that the SOP is fairly detailed. Now I'm coming back to the actual spreadsheet, and here it is. And of course, this already has those items recommended. And if I scroll down a little bit, I'm just going to show you that these items are in alphanumeric order on column C over here. By item ID, they're currently sorted by alphanumerically. So that's why when I'm looking through here, you can kind of see in column BK output, that tells whether it's a turnoff, a maintenance change, or a new stocking opportunity. So in column BK, as I scroll up and down, you can see that some of these items fall into one of those 3 categories, and other items didn't even measure up to any of those categories. Because this is a list of all sellable items, not just stockable items. So some items aren't affected at all by the analysis that we did. Now, because this report lists them in alphanumeric items, that's why I might want to do a sort on them, because what I want to do is I want to analyze whether I agree with some of these recommendations it has made. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to start doing a sort. And of course, I've already got it on my web page, but I'm going to come up here and click this option that says sort. And remember that I can sort this any way I want, but I'm going to sort it by one of these columns between AX and BM, because these are the new criteria. And I might sort it several different times, but you'll get what I'm getting at here in a second. So the first thing I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to sort by output. So in other words, this column here, output, and I'll go Z to A, that's this column here that shows whether they're a new stocking item or a shut off or whatever. And I want to get them all grouped together like they are down in these little tabs below. So I'm going to click add a column. And the next sort I'm going to do is change, and I'll explain why I'm doing that in a second. There's the one, change. And then I'm going to add one more. And out of that one, I'm going to do stock. And again, you guys will sort it 6 different ways based on whatever you want to do. I'm just doing maybe something that I think might be a common way to do it. But let me point out why I'm using these 3. So, of course, output's kind of obvious. We want to sort it by whether they're a new stocking item or an item to turn off or whatever. The second one, change, let me explain that one. If you look up here to column BB right here, BB is changed. There it is. And a lot of them say no. Some say Y for yes. But remember earlier on the call when we were looking towards the left side of this spreadsheet and it showed usage? Well, look at column AY, DXP criteria, and AZ is location criteria. So there's local and company-wide. These 2 columns refer to that. So if you've had those 4 sales orders of usage or 2 in 6 months, then it meets the criteria. So as we look down through these columns and some of them say yes, that means that you've had plenty of usage to qualify and meet that location criteria, either company-wide or local. And if you had them at both local and company-wide, that might qualify you to make a change to it. So, or at least location-wise, if you've had plenty of usage at your location, it should say yes under change. So that's why I'm sorting it by change here. And you can see up here, I'm doing output, change, and then stock. And of course, when I do that, I'm just going to click OK now. And that's just the way I'm doing it. But now look at your column BK. All of a sudden, all your turnoffs have come up towards the top now. And if I was to scroll down a little bit, the next things would be maintenance. And the ones after that might be new stocking items, you know. So I'm going to scroll a little bit. So all we're trying to do is we're trying to bring the low-hanging fruit towards the top of the spreadsheet so that you can focus on it. Excuse me. There you go. Now you're seeing over it. And what you're going to do as the manager, you're going to look at some of this information and say, do I agree with this? So here you can see new stocking opportunities, and over here's the minutes recommending, and you can see it says up to is right here. Now again, I chose to sort by certain columns. You might at one point say, I want to look at all non-stock items that have usage. On the next hand, you might want to look at all stock items that show no usage, and you might sort this, you know, many different ways. And just up here in the top left, look at my mouse. So I'm way up in the top left here. There's a blue arrow that points back, kind of circles back. If you want to go back and click it a few times, it'll back up to before you sorted it. And then you can pick a new sort and do it a different way or whatever. But the point I'm getting at is that you would look through some of these. Let's just say that all of these PTD items over here that I just highlighted, this customer orders those, but you drop ship them from the supplier. You don't stock any of those. So it's recommending you to put these in new stock as a new stocking opportunity because it doesn't know your customer. It just knows you sell a lot of them. So you might take these items, and what you might do, and I'm just going to do it as I'm going to highlight the line that covers all of them so you can see now I got them all covered. And maybe I'm going to right click that and hide it. Or delete. I could just delete it if I want to, but however you want to do, what you're trying to do is get rid of the items that you don't agree with, because you're going to bring this spreadsheet down to the low-hanging fruit, and what's left on it is what you're going to send your IM&P contact person and say, hey, these are the changes that I agree with. Can you look these over and change them? So again, for various reasons, I might be coming up and say, all those ISCAR, we drop ship them to, I don't want them on this report. I'm going to delete them. And in this case, I'm just hiding them because I might use this spreadsheet again on another training session. But you would probably delete them off if you're sure you don't want them. And now you can see how this column that's showing all these items is getting, it's still telling you whether they're new stocking opportunities or they're turn off items or whatever they are. And what you're going to do is keep on hiding items until you get it down to what you want. And now I'm just going to bring up one more of the same spreadsheet. So look over here at the far right column where it says BK. This is just an example of what you might bring this spreadsheet down to when you're done with it. And of course, it's not a real one we did. It's a sample. We did this, but we did it so that there's 8 turnoffs, 8 new stocking opportunities, and 8 changes. But in the real world, you might have 40 turnoffs and 12 new stocking opportunities and 108 maintenance changes or something. All you're doing is, and I hid the lines, but you might be deleting the ones you don't want. But the whole point is that when you send it to your IM&P contact, you want to leave on the report the items and the changes that you as a manager agree make sense to you, because you want to have the most efficient turning inventory based on your usage and based on your customers and so forth. Excuse me. So my hope is that this was helpful to you, I know this spreadsheet is way better than the original stock status we had, because the original one didn't recommend anything. So now you've got one that actually recommends some information, and then when you manipulate it and sort it, you can come up with your judged low-hanging fruit of items. And I'm just going to point out again that this SOP pretty much goes through all that information and covers it pretty well. And I'm going to go back to the actual page again here, to the actual operational excellence portal. And so in this, again, here's the entire operational guide. And if I click on this, the whole guide shows up with all the chapters and everything. But over here in the middle, if I want to drill down to that spreadsheet, which we call the stock status analysis, either one of these 2 fields will get me there. And then I click on best practices after that. Down here where it says order processing, this is actually all the different SOPs for P21. And I just thought I'd throw that in because there's a ton of good information out on this portal. So hopefully this was helpful to you. We appreciate you attending. And please be on the lookout for other topics that we'll be training on. Thanks a lot.